There exists a silent form of destruction so potent it requires no violence, no scandal, and no confrontation. In fact, its brilliance lies in its calmness, its detachment, and its mastery of strategic withdrawal. This form of power doesn't declare itself with noise. It doesn't seek the spotlight. Instead, it operates in the shadows, uncoiling slowly, unraveling its target until they fall, often never realizing what undid them. This is the essence of Machiavellian destruction, power that doesn't fight, but wins. Machiavelli understood one critical truth that most people ignore. True strength isn't displayed through confrontation. It isn't about who yells the loudest or strikes the hardest. It's about control, mental, emotional, and psychological. And most importantly, it's about patience. It's about making your enemies reveal their hand, expose their insecurities, and fall into their own traps. Destruction, in its highest form, isn't dramatic. It's subtle, and it's permanent. Imagine a moment where someone insults you. Maybe it's in a public forum, a workplace meeting, or an intimate conversation. Most people would instinctively react. They'd feel the sting, the rush of adrenaline, and respond emotionally. Maybe they'd lash out. Maybe they'd defend themselves, but whatever they do, they engage. And in doing so, they hand over control. They validate the attacker's narrative. They give energy to the conflict. Now imagine a different response, a Machiavellian response. You stay still. You don't flinch. You don't defend. You don't retaliate. You simply observe. You hold your ground with quiet confidence. And suddenly everything changes. Your silence does something terrifying to the aggressor. It disrupts their expectation. They came for a fight, for emotional leverage, for validation. But you offer them nothing. They push and nothing moves. They scream and the void echoes back. And now the spotlight isn't on you, it's on them. Their behavior, once perceived as assertive, now looks desperate. Their words, once sharp, now sound hollow. This is the first layer of Machiavellian destruction. Stillness is domination. Most people think power means motion, action, reaction. But real power knows that sometimes the most dangerous move is no move at all. Stillness is not submission, it is control. It is the refusal to entertain drama, the refusal to be baited. The beauty of this approach is how it disorients your opponent. They're used to triggering emotions. They're used to manipulating reactions. But when you give them nothing, no energy, no response, they begin to falter. Their tactics backfire. Their own desperation is laid bare. But stillness is only the beginning. The next layer is even more devastating. Withdrawal. Withdrawal is not defeat. It's a deliberate act of subtraction. You pull your presence, your attention, your availability. Not with a speech or a dramatic exit, but with quiet precision. You stop feeding their narrative. You stop showing up for their games, and in doing so, you create an absence that echoes louder than any confrontation. You see, your attention was their fuel. Your reaction was their victory. But now, you've gone dark. And the silence begins to consume them. They panic, they escalate, they grow louder and more erratic, trying to reclaim what they lost. But every word, every attempt only further exposes their instability. This is the art of psychological subtraction. You make yourself scarce. You remove the supply. And like a parasite deprived of a host, your enemy begins to decay. What most fail to realize is that those who attack you are often not trying to destroy you, they are trying to use you. They want a piece of your energy. They want your reaction to affirm their importance. When you refuse, they are starved. The most Machiavellian response to conflict is not retaliation. It's irrelevance. You make their actions so futile, their attacks so meaningless, that their very existence fades from your concern. Now comes the deeper psychological strike, using their need for attention against them. This is the third layer, Those who insult, gossip, or manipulate are not acting from strength. They're bleeding insecurity. Their behavior isn't about you, it's about them. About the hollow core inside them that begs to be filled with your reaction, your energy, your acknowledgement. But when you don't give it to them, when you deny them even the satisfaction of recognition, they unravel. They begin to look unstable, obsessed, and everyone watching begins to wonder, why are they so focused on someone who clearly doesn't care? This is when perception begins to shift. The more they talk, the more pathetic they appear. And the more you remain calm, composed, and focused on your own path, the more undeniable your strength becomes. You've robbed them of the only weapon they had, your attention. And that's when the tide turns. In every room, every workplace, every social circle, this dynamic can play out. Someone tries to undermine you, they question your abilities, they gossip behind your back, they provoke, and they expect you to engage, but you don't. Instead, you deliver quietly, efficiently. You let your results speak. You speak only when necessary, and always with clarity. You act with integrity. And soon the people around you begin to notice the gap between your actions and their words. This is the fourth layer of Machiavellian strategy: contrast. Contrast is the most silent but potent form of exposure. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to speak. You simply act in a way that contradicts every falsehood told about you. If they say you're weak, you remain unshaken. If they say you're arrogant, you act with grace. If they say you're manipulative, you move with transparency. Every move you make becomes a quiet counterattack. And over time, their narrative crumbles under the weight of reality. But the most brutal form of destruction comes next: erasure. You stop acknowledging them altogether. They become nothing, not because they won't stop talking, but because their words don't matter. This is the death of relevance. They threw everything at you: insults, slander, manipulation, and none of it landed. You didn't fight. You didn't react. You rose. This final form of Machiavellian destruction is the most devastating of all. You don't just win, you make them irrelevant. They become a footnote to your story, an echo of something that once tried to matter. But what about the subtle enemies? The ones who don't scream or provoke publicly, but whisper, sabotage, undermine quietly. These enemies are even more dangerous. They operate in shadows, planting seeds of doubt, spreading half-truths. They don't insult you directly. They erode your foundation one whisper at a time. Here's where most people fail. They start defending themselves, explaining, trying to correct the record. But that plays into the saboteur's hands. Instead, the Machiavellian strategy is elevation. You rise, you perform, you dominate. You speak clearly in public. You show your values in action. You leave no room for doubt in the minds of others. You become so consistent, so excellent, that the whisper campaign collapses on its own. Because when people compare the rumors to your reality, the saboteur's credibility dissolves. You never needed to name them. They destroyed themselves. And now, the whispers fade. The story dies, because the only story left is your success. And then comes the final stage: indifference. You no longer even care, not out of pride, but because they've become so small in the scope of your life. They no longer warrant your attention. You've elevated so far beyond their world that even their existence no longer touches yours. This is the deepest layer of Machiavellian destruction. Not just silence, not just withdrawal, but the complete erasure of threat through personal excellence and indifference. You've become untouchable, not because you fought back, but because you never lowered yourself to their level. You didn't retaliate, you didn't explain, you didn't even acknowledge, and still, you won. Because you outlasted them, you outgrew them, you outshined them. That is Machiavellian destruction in its purest form. It's not about attack, It's not about revenge. It's about domination through presence, through silence, through mastery. Your enemies become shadows chasing a ghost, while you continue to build your empire in the light.